Let's talk about the golden rule today. You know how it goes. Do unto others as you would want done to you. This concept is so very subtle in its straightforwardness and power. I think that it is one of the hardest concepts to execute well, but when it is, the rewards you reap are enormous. So normally, when I used to think of the golden rule, I didn't extend it very far beyond common courtesy. Once someone started acting catty or rude or disrespectful towards me, that rule went out the window. I had real bad social anxiety, so my retaliation was in the form of complete withdrawal from them and, of course, criticizing them in my head. And I think this reaction actually kinda comes from a good place, because you are aware that you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. So this seems like a fair consequence for not doing that. But because people are people, this usually just leads to a stalemate, if not spiraling the relationship to ever darker and more volatile levels. I think that we as a society have a lot of resistance to actually giving in to others, admitting fault, things of that nature. The sort of funny thing I've noticed with myself is the more prideful I am on a subject, the more vulnerable I feel about it. So that leads me to feeling like I need to defend myself when it comes under attack. People in defense mode feel like they need to prove something to the other person. If this something is also something they strongly identify with, something that they, if this something is also something they strongly identify with, something that speaks to their core values and that they base significant decisions around, things can get pretty heated very quickly. And I deserve to be treated with respect and kindness is, surprisingly, one of those things. I say that this is surprising because it's treated like this thing that people need to prove to someone else. If you disrespect me, I need to prove that you are in the wrong to validate my belief. Think about that for a moment. And then think about how you react when someone tells you a definitive fact about you is wrong. To give a very silly example, let's say a person accused you of lying about where you live. If you don't have these sort of negative beliefs and insecurities surrounding yourself in reference to your honesty and integrity, then what's your response? Do you get increasingly mad as they insist that you're a liar? Probably not. You don't feel threatened because you know for a fact that you're mostly an honest person and that you're telling the truth. The truth is not up for debate. The truth is the truth. Now let's circle back around to the golden rule. Why do we have resistance to it? When someone treats you in a way you don't deserve to be treated, it sets off some negative memories and emotions you have from when you were probably younger and treated with disrespect. And people tend to take these emotions at face value for the most part. You feel bad, so you, 1, want to defend yourself, and 2, want to validate that you really do deserve to be treated with respect. And I think, this is just a hypothesis, but people might see this as an either-or dilemma. Either they defend themselves, validating that they deserve to be treated with respect, or they treat the other person as they would want to be treated, which would imply that actually the way they were treated is excusable and fine. people feel as though it is a defeat or concession to act otherwise. This is something I still struggle with today, but I have gotten substantially better over the years. It is immensely uncomfortable at first, like any other habit change, but it is incredibly rewarding. I still experience discomfort as I push myself to embrace this value more and more. When someone is upset or irritable towards me, what I strive to do is to genuinely respond to them the way I would like to be responded to. That is, without judgment, without hurt, and with understanding and compassion. This is something I've actually gained a lot of experience for over the years with my fiance. There seems to be a pervasive thinking that we should always be good to those we love. But this is a form of perfectionism that I doubt any long-standing relationship can really hold up to. Why not instead recognize that these dear, cherished people of ours are only human, and their lashing out is likely the result of experiencing so many traumas through their years? For me, the benefits of this are twofold. One is that you no longer expect perfection from yourself or your partner, which is an immense load of stress off. When your partner gets upset with you, it's still upsetting, but now you're not taking it as personally. Moreover, when you all get snippy towards your partner, you can also have more compassion and leniency towards yourself and not harbor the guilt of things you shouldn't have done. It may seem counterintuitive at first, but I find that by allowing myself some irritation, hurt or otherwise, towards things that my loved ones say, I often both feel less inclined to do it, and I don't stew over the implications as much. Conflict is conflict, and so long as we aren't putting each other down, shouting obscenities at each other, or trying to cause physical harm, it's a normal part of a human bond. The other benefit of this is that it frees me up to be more compassionate and understanding towards the other person, and to truly respond to them in the way that I would want to be responded to if I were feeling that volatile. The fact is, I think people in general are living with a huge amount of stress in their lives. And this is really hard to truly appreciate the extent of unless you have experienced being outside of this stress. I say that because for me, while I was living in that stress, part of my damaging beliefs were that I wasn't handling everything as well as I should be. That makes it difficult to see that actually living with that stress on a day-to-day basis is very damaging. It's not just that it tires us out, makes us irritable, and makes us less creative. It's that it causes a buildup of resentment, confusion, and a desperate need to vent those negative emotions. We attach the negative emotions to the way people treat us because negativity triggers our negative emotions. In my experience, when you instead respond to a person with kindness, it sheds a light on that belief. Oftentimes, a person will realize that really, what you said or how you reacted wasn't the cause of their negative emotions, but that it was tied to some stressors in their life, which is likely tied to stressors in their earlier years. The more I respond to a person in this manner, the more I find that they start to harbor less negative emotions towards me and start to become more relaxed, not just towards me, but towards their own negative feelings in general. I think about it like this. People care deeply about the people close to them. They usually desire to maintain or strengthen that relationship. Negative reactions cause a lot of stress to that person, even if they feel valid in responding negatively, because I got a typo in my script. Because if they reacted to it in the way most people do, this causes damage to the this causes damage to the relationship. But if instead you don't respond strongly to the negative reaction and don't let it affect your bond, i.e., you don't hold a grudge, this alleviates the extra stress of this person needing to keep their negative emotions in check around you. It doesn't have to sit and simmer underneath the surface, causing more and more pressure. Instead, it's released, and then you can both move on. But how do you do this exactly, especially when you feel like you're getting triggered by these negative reactions? For me, I had to go through the process of disconnecting my negative emotions from the present moment. This might sound a bit weird, but hear me out. I know that my own negative emotions are tied to damaging beliefs that I've held on to. If I am hurt because someone close to me is disrespectful towards me, it isn't because they were disrespectful towards me, it's because I internalized that their disrespecting me meant that I was a person who didn't deserve respect. This is a very damaging belief because negative emotions are a natural part of life, and trying to cut them off when it comes to a select few people usually just makes them worse in my experience. So I'm tying my deservingness of respect to something that was practically inevitable. But now I have internalized the belief that I am a person deserving of respect, kindness, etc. This is as solid a fact in my mind as the fact that I am a woman or that I am a human. I don't feel a need to defend this principle because, as you can see, it is independent of the circumstances around me. It is not, I am a person deserving of respect so long as the people close to me treat me that way. Which, when said out loud, sounds kind of silly, and yet most people seem to subscribe to this way of thinking. So now, if a person close to me gets upset with me, I don't get a cold feeling in my stomach, my whole body doesn't tense up, and I don't think, what did I do now? Instead, my thought process goes something like, they're upset. Something about what I've done must have triggered them. And don't get me wrong, an absence of self-criticism doesn't mean I'm not going to do anything about it. What it does mean is that I can spend my energy and effort towards helping them feel better and to figuring out a solution that doesn't trigger them. What I've also experienced, though, is when I keep a calm, non-judgmental, and understanding state of being, this actually tends to make the triggers less powerful with repetition. I find that these triggers usually come with some sort of negative attachment towards one's being, like that they're not lovable, or worth respecting, or worth doing uncomfortable things for, things of that nature. And when I choose to respond in a loving and understanding way, I am, with my actions, recognizing their pain and stress, and at the same time directly disproving that negative attachment. For example, even though you are treating me in a hurtful way, I understand that it's a consequence of your suffering, and that does not make you less lovable or desirable. other words, I believe that when you strongly embrace core values like this, people can sense that on a subconscious level. And as you continue to emanate and reinforce that belief with your behaviors, the perceived that God, I can't talk today. The perceived threat to their pride or self-worth or what have you starts to naturally fade away. It can take some time to desensitize yourself from triggers, but you don't need to see them as anything more than emotional responses to long held on traumas. They don't mean anything towards your worth as a person. Now, what are other ways you can embrace the concept of the golden rule? Think about little ways you can go out of your comfort zone to do a little extra for people. This, by the way, I feel can be an exceptional way to get yourself noticed at work. People feel like they have to work harder to get ahead, but what if instead you focused on using the golden rule with your supervisor? If they seem stressed over a certain task, you can see about helping them out with it, even though it might not be in your job description. If they criticize your work, instead of getting fired up, you can ask thoughtful questions to get specific about what they expect. Mostly, I encourage you to develop beliefs around your self-worth not being tied to the work you do, so that if a supervisor does get irritable towards you, you can respond and react with calm and understanding, rather than feeling your job position is being threatened. Trying to do these things like asking thoughtful questions and thinking of ways to do something unexpected that they would appreciate is much, much easier when you firmly believe that your value is independent of how others treat you, and that your higher up is a flawed person just like any other, and negative reactions towards you are far less personal than you originally think them to be. I'm a crazy person, so I tend to do a lot of things at once with the expectation that I will grow massively in the coming days, weeks, and months. This can be pretty exhausting though, so doing just a little bit at a time and slowly progressing as you get more and more comfortable is also a perfectly acceptable way to go about it. And by the way, I feel it's important to denote that when you take these actions, you should very much let go of the anticipation of reciprocation. This might feel difficult because people tend to operate pretty strongly on this concept. Think about the truest form of the golden rule, though. If someone does something extra for you because they genuinely wanted to and they expect nothing in return, would you prefer that or prefer getting something knowing that something is expected of you in turn? I find that practicing generosity will always naturally give you returns in one way or another. You can think of it sort of like karma, or if you're not that spiritual, consider the butterfly effect. If you do something nice for the particularly critical and aggressive supervisor, you may find that they calm down a little, allowing the chance for your team to relax and bond together. They may then be more forgiving of any mistakes you make and more willing to help you out with something you're struggling with. So the more you practice the golden rule, the more returns you get. And as a bonus, you get to feel better about yourself as a person too. You know how people say 80% of your results come from 20% of the work you do? I personally believe that the application of this rule fits that criteria. Because we live in such a stressful world today, we don't often think about how things are affecting other people. When we lower our own standards and give ourselves breathing room, It gives us the chance to look around and see others who could benefit from our help. It allows us to look at their problems with fresh eyes and provide new insights and actions. And because so many people are stressed out, there aren't many people who do this, and even fewer who act on it. And from there, it's easy to recognize that the people who stand out are the ones who get farther ahead, who get the raises and promotions, and get perks like more leniency, handshake job offers, so on and so forth. That's just a little bit of my experience and thoughts on the golden rule. I've been using it liberally in my current life, and I am already reaping the benefits. So go ahead, choose your own victim to subject to this rule. With enough stubborn persistence, I think you'll find yourself pleasantly surprised just how much things will change for the better for you both.